Hey guys, what is up? Hope you're having a fantastic day so far, and Bluebird and a very special episode of Steven Universe Future just ended, so I figured sit down and do a little review discussion of both of these episodes, so just keep in mind, if you haven't seen them yet, you've been warned, I'm going to be spoiling stuff, but with that, let's get into it. So first we have up is Bluebird, and this was boarded by Lamar and Miki. Now, the last episode Lamar boarded was the one that Adam Muto also boarded on, which was Rosebuds. So Lamar and Mickey, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, might actually be the pair for Steven Universe Future, and they did a good job with this episode. I think everybody knew from the start that Bluebird, this gem, was going to be a fusion of Aquamarine and Ruby. It was pretty obvious. Even in the episode, it says it was very obvious. Everybody knew. But nevertheless, I'm going to go over just kind of give my thoughts. I like how it opened with the promotional ad for Little Homeworld / Little Homeschool. Thought it was very cute, like seeing that. But the premise of this episode is that Steven keeps getting pranked, but they're kind of not that good. It's like someone puts a sign on his back that says, like, tell me I smell good, and switches out his juice for tomato soup, which he likes, and then instead of, like, TPing the car, they just stack up all the toilet paper rolls on top of the car. So none of it's really, like, malicious or anything like that. Something else I noticed, though, is that Haven't You Noticed I'm a Star is playing at, I guess what they do, it's kind of like a party that they have for every new gem who shows up, which ends up being Bluebird. And Steven immediately knows that Bluebird is a fusion of Aquamarine and Ruby. Very dismissive of them at first because Steven knows that both these gems don't like him, probably coming back for revenge. But the thing is that I find interesting is, like, I think the bathroom is going to be, like, the new headquarters for Steven Universe Future, because in Rosebuds, everyone went to the bathroom, and now everyone's in the bathroom talking about Bluebird and how, Bluebird's messing with Steven, probably going to want revenge on him, and initially the gems are dismissive of it, since, other gems have come to Little Homeworld and Little Homeschool to try and better themselves, make a better life for themselves, and also even Pearl points out, Steven, like, every evil person that you've come across, you always try to, like, see the best in them and try to make them a better person, so it's kind of odd that Steven's so paranoid about Bluebird, but eventually Steven's like, okay, like, I'll give them a chance. And something that I noticed is that Bluebird has 4 legs and feet, and it's something that I first noticed when they were standing outside of the bathroom, just, I guess, waiting for Steven and the other gems to come out. But anyway, Steven is paranoid just about everything that Bluebird does, and it's kind of like that trope that you've seen in other cartoons before, where it looks like they're doing something malicious, but it's really not, and they're, like, being a good model person and everything like that. So, I mean, you could kind of see the twist coming from the beginning, because I feel this is a cliche that's been done before, and not saying that there's anything wrong with a cliche, because I think if you do it well, it's totally fine, but you could kind of predict the beats of this episode. There was one thing that I found funny kind of here in the middle is Amethyst with her drawings of Steven and was, like, leaving them around the house for him, and he thinks it's Bluebird making fun of him by drawing him poorly, when it's actually Amethyst just trying to learn how to draw. And I don't know why, I just thought it was, like, super cute and funny that Amethyst is, like, learning how to draw, and because we've seen her draw before when they were trying to draw Aquamarine, which I don't know if, like, this is, like, a callback to that specific moment when all the gems try to draw their interpretation of Aquamarine, and then the episode that Aquamarine ends up coming back is where Amethyst is drawing, so I don't know if that was, like, a reference or a callback to that specifically, but I just found that moment funny, and, like, I'd kind of like to see Amethyst, like, get better at drawing, like, maybe towards the end of Steven Universe Future, we could see what her artwork looks like towards the end. I just think that would be, like, a nice thing to include, but we'll see. But to no one's surprise, Bluebird is evil. Bluebird is a fusion of Aquamarine and Ruby, Eyeball specifically, and literally they unfuse and they make this huge deal about it, and then Steven's just like, yeah, that everybody knew. Like, it was like no one's shocked by this, but like Aquamarine and Ruby are shocked that everybody knew and they were still nice. Like, they couldn't understand why everybody was being so nice to them, even though they knew from the start that they were a fusion and they were probably here to, like, maybe take revenge on Steven, but they still gave him, like, the benefit of the doubt. And Steven says it's because they're nice people, which is true. Like, they'll give gems second chances. But, you know, I mean, there's a part of me that's like, okay, yes, ever give someone second chances, and that's something that we say a lot in Steven Universe, but I'm just really happy that we finally just have two characters who are just evil, and are just gonna pretty much stay evil. Really looking forward to that, because, you know, there's always some sort of redemption. So I'm actually really excited to see where this whole Bluebird, Aquamarine, Ruby thing ends up going. And then we also get a callback with the my dad, how Aquamarine refers to Greg as my dad. So I liked that callback. And Greg actually ends up cutting his hair, and I thought this was coming because Aquamarine was holding him by his hair, and then Ruby has that little dagger as her gem weapon. So I was like, okay, either Greg's gonna cut it himself to get away, or they're just gonna be mean to Greg and cut his hair because they know it's important to him, or assuming that it's important to him. And he ends up cutting it himself to get away, which I think is interesting because I think this could take Greg in a new direction in terms of character development, because so far in the series, the only episode that Greg's really been in is he had a brief appearance in Rosebuds when he bolted out of there of that awkward dinner, and this episode when he gets kidnapped, or when he's taken hostage and kidnapped. So this could actually take Greg in an interesting direction now that he doesn't have his hair, and he's had his hair long for such a long time in his life. So it'll be interesting to see, like, if this changes him at all, if he's gonna maybe start being a bit more mature, responsible, because he doesn't have that long rocker hair kind of a thing going on. But it'll be interesting. But this sets Steven off, and he says father, and this was such a weird thing because Steven has never referred to Greg as father. It's always been dad. And this is when his gem powers flare up again because he gets angry at Aquamarine and Ruby. So maybe like this other side of Steven is kind of like his gem side that we saw in Change Your Mind, and that part of him kind of takes control and takes over, which is why Steven would call his dad father, because that's never happened before, and it was really weird to hear come out of Steven. But yeah, definitely curious about that, and I'm wondering if we'll see Steven refer to other people in a more formal way. But yeah, very interesting and very curious to see if that happens again. So there's a bit of a fight. Steven, starts fighting back against Aquamarine and Ruby, but eventually they just start fighting themselves because they can't fuse, because the only reason that they were able to fuse in the first place is because they hated Steven. And Steven actually gives this, speech about being yourself and fusion and all this other stuff, a very Steven speech. But I noticed the music during this very similar to the melody that was used at the end of Change Your Mind when Steven actually sings the song Change Your Mind. So I'm wondering if that's going to kind of be like a melody or motif that's used throughout Steven Universe Future. But during this speech that Steven's giving, both Ruby and Aquamarine are both like, oh yeah, see, this is why we hate Steven. Fuse again. The other gems come out, fuse into Alexandrite, and then squash them. One cool thing I do want to point out here is that Bluebird's weapons, it's water, but can, make them turn to ice almost, because they can turn into, spears and swords and stuff like that. Pretty cool weapon. But unfortunately, and this is probably my biggest gripe with this, they just get away. Alexandrite's there, smacks them down, they unfuse, and then the gems unfuse from Alexandrite, and then Aquamarine says that she's sorry, even though it's in the most sarcastic tone ever, and of course she tricks Steven, and then she grabs Ruby, and then they fly off, and then they just kind of watch this happen. The gems just watch this happen. I was like, oh, okay, I guess they have to be kind of the antagonist for Steven Universe Future, but they just got away in the most cartoony, predictable way possible, I guess. So yeah, out of everything, that was probably like my least favorite part of like how it ended and how they just stood there and did nothing and just let them go. But yeah, overall, Bluebird, interesting episode. I think it sets up a lot more for the future in terms of how Aquamarine, Ruby, and Bluebird are going to play a part in the story. Also with Greg, I think this could be the start of something in Greg's development for Steven Universe Future. So overall, liked Bluebird a lot. I think compared to the first 4 episodes, this was more of a just kind of fun, just relaxed kind of episode of Steven Universe, and just kind of sets up bigger plot points to come. My biggest issue is with the ending and how they just got away in a very cartoony manner. But overall, liked it a lot. Can't wait to see Bluebird, Aquamarine, and Ruby again and see how they play into the story. Next, we have a very special episode, and this was boarded by Amish Kumar and Aaron Austin, and they were board partners before, so they're probably going to be a pair for the rest of the series, just based on the episodes that they have boarded already. But we start off with the guys, which again is a nice callback to very, very early on in the series of Steven Universe, one of the first couple episodes. But we open with Rainbow 2.0 with Onion, and basically Rainbow 2.0 is Onion's babysitter, and Rainbow is Mary Poppins. I believe they use they and he pronouns according to the crew, but I'll probably mostly be referring to them as they. But anyway, they get a song, which is pretty cool. So the first song of Steven Universe Future is a Rainbow song, which I think is really cool. But legit just Mary Poppins has the umbrella, animating toys, and everything's cleaning itself up, and just very, very Mary Poppins. And I absolutely love this aesthetic kind of the Mary Poppins feel. There's a Steven voodoo doll that shows up here, and it looks like it's been torn apart and has needles sticking out of it. So I guess Onion doesn't like Steven, and as we later see in this episode, Pearl, Onion only likes Rainbow, so not Pearl and Steven separately. Has to be Rainbow, otherwise Onion goes a little bit crazy, as we'll see. But while Rainbow is babysitting Onion, there's, I guess, a safety Geminar that Garnet's running, and so Steven has to go back and forth between, which again is kind of a bit of a cliche, how you have 2 responsibilities and they gotta keep going back and forth between them. But again, I think it was done well, nothing wrong with a cliche. So Garnet offers to run the Geminar by herself, by trying to tell all these gems every possibility in the future that they have of dying, essentially, which obviously does not go well. They are terrified and don't want to do anything, so this leaves Pearl to babysit Onion by herself. Sunstone is in this episode, which is nice to see again, because again, we saw Sunstone and Rainbow 2.0 very briefly and change your mind, Rainbow 2.0 especially. So Sunstone gets a little PSA rap. I don't think it's gonna be I'm not technically sure if it's a song. It was just kind of more of a PSA set to music more than a song that Rainbow had earlier in the episode. Something I did notice here was that the portrait where Rose used to be, in the stairwell, now has a portrait of Steven and the gems, which I thought was really nice. I like that when Steven got not necessarily get rid of, but put Rose's portrait in Lion's Mane with all of her stuff, he replaced it with a picture of his family, which I thought was nice. I also kind of like that this wasn't a huge focus, this wasn't some big thing that they felt they needed an episode on. It just happened. Between Rosebuds to now, it was just something that, happened, that Steven did, and I really liked that, and I thought that was a nice little touch. But back with Onion and Pearl, Onion is upset that Rainbow's not there. Onion's actually beating stuff up around the house with an umbrella, which I just thought was funny that Rainbow has an umbrella, so Onion's trying to clean up stuff with the umbrella, but is just being very forceful with it. Thought that was funny. There's a nice little stare gag right here where when Steven comes back to help Pearl with Onion, they use the umbrella to send him back upstairs to bed, and then Onion will run back down the stairs and send him up again. It was just a funny, cute little gag that I liked a lot. But then Steven goes back to Garnet to help with the Geminar, And then they have like this home safety obstacle course that they made where just everything in the house is trashed. And then there's even a motion smoothing joke here, which is, I don't know why it was so funny to me, but I hate motion smoothing. If you don't know what it is or what it's called, but it's like on newer TVs where it almost looks like you're playing something like faster than it should be. It almost looks like you're like fast forwarding a video kind of a thing, because what it does, it tries to like guess what frames are between the frames of like a movie or something like that, and it's absolutely terrible for animation or movies that are shot in 24 frames per second, because that is their intended frames per second. So when you have motion smoothing, it makes it look awful and terrible and should never be used. But Garnet says it's good for football, and like it is, it's good for sports, it's good for things that are like meant to be seen, you know, a higher frame rate. So like movies that are shot at 60 frames per second, like that's totally fine. Sports is totally fine. Animation and movies that are shot at 24 frames per second are awful for it. And so like, as someone who went to film school and studied animation and cinema arts and sciences and all that stuff, I don't know, this was just a joke that I really appreciated. I don't think other people probably appreciated it or laughed at it as much as I did, but I heard that joke and I was just like, yes, that's me. So I don't know, I just really liked it. That was probably the longest rant that you'll ever hear about that joke, or just me talking about it, but yeah, I really liked the motion smoothing joke. Just, I related to it a lot. But back with Onion, Steven and Pearl fuse again and eventually take Onion to the safety seminar as Rainbow to just have Onion sit there, learn about safety. And the animation when Steven is just like completely exhausted after this day of him talking about how he's fine, it was great. This like just the facial expressions and movement was really great to see, so I really liked that animation there. And then we get what I think is a Pied Piper reference, where Onion has like the little blade of grass and then ends up leading all the gems off of a cliff. I believe that's the Pied Piper, except instead of gems, it was like mice or rats. I'd have to brush up on my fairy tales, but I believe that's a Pied Piper reference. And then there's like a fourth wall break with Amethyst when like everything's going wrong and, you know, the gems are falling off the cliff, and then they're trying to decide who should save them, Sunstone or Rainbow, and then like Amethyst runs in there and he's like, Steven, and Amethyst goes, Steven, I need you. And Steven goes, why? And she's like, because I haven't seen you in 11 minutes. So we get like a little fourth wall break joke, and then we get like another fourth wall break because it was, the entire episode was actually just like a PSA safety announcement for the Geminar that was happening. And then we even get like an additional fourth wall break when it's not even part of the episode anymore. Sunstone's just like talking to nobody, and Pearl's like, who are you talking to, while they're playing volleyball? And then the episode basically just ends from there. So 2 more comedic episodes, especially compared to the first 4 that premiered last week. But I enjoyed them. Thought they were funny, thought they were cute, and I mean, Steven Universe Future obviously wasn't going to be like the entire series, was going to be like the first 4 episodes where it was just like lore and backstory and all these intense moments. They were going to take some time to relax and kind of get, not necessarily more like the towny episodes, but kind of just take that step back, and just kind of put the little seeds in for plot points that will come up in the future, like we saw with Bluebird, and then more of like the towny episode where we saw with a very special episode, where it's just kind of like Rainbow and Sunstone and Steven trying to take care of their responsibilities and stuff like that. But yes, overall I enjoyed these episodes, but I would love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of Bluebird and a very special episode, because I would love to hear it. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day, and until next time, guys, take care.